afternoon, boys and girls, and I would just like to wish you all a happy Constitution Day. I know that you're all looking forward to Constitution Day, and it's been written on your calendars, and you've been deciding, Mom, Dad, is it Constitution Day yet? Is it Constitution Day yet? Well, alas, you will not have to wait any longer, because today is Constitution Day. Yay! Exciting, exciting, I know. You can throw your parties later, but first you have to watch this lesson. So, if it's Constitution Day, why does it say United States government on there? That is a great question, because last week we finished up with talking about the three branches of government. And so the three branches of government actually stem from the Constitution. So we're going to start with learning more about the Constitution, and then we're going to kind of use that to bridge into why we have three branches of government, where that really came from, and why it's important. So I hope that you guys can contain your excitement about Constitution Day long enough to pay attention to this lesson. I know, it's a big thing to ask of you all, but I believe in each and every one of you. So let's get started. So first things first, you need to make sure that you have your materials that you need. You need to have your science/social studies notebook, and you need to have a writing utensil with you, just because you'll be needing to write down your there's some definitions in here that you should be writing down. And again, our learning target is that I can explain the powers of the national and state government. So really, when we're talking about the Constitution, the three branches of government, this is what we're talking about. The Constitution breaks down the powers that the national and state government have, because it breaks down the three branches of government, really talk about how the difference between national and state government and the different powers that each has, and checks and balances that are in place to make sure one doesn't get more powerful than the other. Because that's initially why America left England, was because the government, which was the king of England, had grown too powerful and was really unfair and cruel to the colonies in the beginning of America. So they left England to start their own country, really, in their own government, and they said, we probably shouldn't do it like we did last time, because that did not end up well. So, continuing on. We're learning more about the United States Constitution, not just because it's Constitution Day, but because it's kind of the founding document of our nation. So in 1787, a group of people called the Founding Fathers met together at the Constitutional Convention, and they were just really trying to figure out what it meant for us to have a document that kind of would state what America wanted, what it meant for the people to have a government, and how this one document that was written in 1787 could still be in effect thousands of years later. Because if you think about it, 1787 and it's now 2020, that's a big time difference. That's about over 200, maybe 300 years later, that this piece of paper that a bunch of old men wrote in a room, that we still are governed under today and that we still follow. The Constitution is what kind of really guides our entire life as Americans in the United States. Oops, there we go. Went a little ahead of myself. So again, it was a plan for the U.S. government, and it's described in the United States Constitution. It was written in 1787 at the Constitutional Convention. This picture below here are all of our founding fathers. They all met here at the Constitutional Convention, and they really just kind of worked out what it meant for the United States. So, for example, George Washington presided over the convention, but James Madison wrote the document that formed the model for the Constitution. So, these are two really big names. If you've ever watched Hamilton, you would hear those names in there. They have a really big part of our history and are very important. So, why is the Constitution important? Well, all our rights and freedoms of a citizen are protected in the U.S. Constitution. This means that basically a lot of our laws, even though they're created by the legislative branch, they stem from the Constitution. Our rights and freedoms, all of our amendments. So if you ever hear anyone say that goes against my rights, or that goes against my constitutional rights, this is what they're referring to. They're saying, well, in the Constitution, there's a thing called the Bill of Rights. It's the first 10 amendments, and it's basically what are our rights as citizens, and they're protected under the Constitution. So, for example, one of the first amendments is the right to freedom of speech. So what that's saying is we have the right to pretty much think or say whatever we want under the United States, and we're protected under that. I mean, there are other rules that go along with that, but it's saying that we have the right to, we have the right to protest. We have the right to kind of publish what we want. We have the right to go against beliefs that we don't agree with. It's saying that we have the right to think for ourselves, which is really important because there are governments in the world who they don't have the right for freedom of speech. They don't have the right to share their opinions and think freely. So for the United States to have these 10 very strong amendments in the beginning of the Constitution, it's very important to recognize how really wonderful that is for the United States. Because like I said, some countries, people who speak out against their government, people who have opposing ideas from their government, they're often persecuted, they're punished, and often die for speaking out and trying to have freedom of speech just like we do here in the United States. So the Constitution lists the powers that the government does and does not have. That is in bold capital letters because it's really important that the government has limits and checks and balances because then it protects the rights of the citizens. And this Constitution describes how the government is organized. Like I said earlier, if we didn't have a Constitution, if we didn't have anything that we all agreed would limit the government, then human nature tends to lend itself to people kind of getting power hungry. Like I said again, America originally left the United States to form the 13 colonies and what we have now today because they didn't like the rule under England and under the king. So if we were to just not have the Constitution and just have another king, we would probably end up back where we were to begin with. So the three branches of government list what the federal, national, state government and on what all of their powers are and are not. So you should check out this video. It's about the three branches of government, and it really kind of more talks about how power is divided in the United States. It's a really short video, but I think it really talks and really explains more of what's important to know and how the Constitution really breaks down all of the power in the United States. So here, this is where you should have your social studies notebook out. I would like you to kind of make this like a definition word, the legislative branch, just like we did on Tuesday. You just write it down. I highlighted my words so I could see it, and it was on my piece of paper. This should be on page 2 in your notebook. So on page 1, you have the definitions from Tuesday and the chart. On page 2, the very back of page 1, this is where you should start this page. The legislative branch. So this branch makes the laws. It holds Congress within it. And within Congress, we have the Senate and the House of Representatives. So those are some really big things I just said. So Congress is what makes up the legislative branch. So if we had like an umbrella, you could say that under the umbrella, there's Congress. And under Congress, there's the Senate and the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives and the Senate work together to pass bills, to create laws, they really govern, and they have checks and balances with the president, which is in charge of the executive branch. So within the Senate, there are 100 elected senators from each state. So that means there are 100 elected senators total, but 2 are from each state. So we have 50 states, 2 from each state. That's a really great even number of 100. So, and then the House of Representatives, there's 435 elected representatives total. So, and representatives are based on each state's population. What that really means is, so for example, Michigan has 14 representatives in the House of Representatives. That's based on our population as a state. New York has 27 representatives in the House of Representatives because they're a much larger state. So again, it's based on population, so that we have an equal amount of representation per population. And so altogether, there are 535 people within Congress, even though there's 2 separate kind of, not parties, but just two separate things working together within Congress. And so they are in charge of making laws. We can't pass any laws or bills without the approval of either the majority of the House or the Senate. So make sure you write all this down in your social studies notebook. Next, we have the executive branch. The executive branch carries out the laws. It has the president, and then the vice president, and then the cabinet. And the cabinet is nominated by the president, but it must be approved by the Senate. This here is an example of a checks and balance to make sure, again, that power is limited for each branch. So when we vote for the president of the United States, we're voting for who is in charge of the executive branch. And if you can remember, we have an election coming up in November, and the people get to vote to decide who will be our president for the next 4 years of term. So it's really important that we vote and we use our right to vote and we use our voice and our right to freedom of speech to decide who is best fit to run our country, because to have the power of running our country is a really, really great big deal. So the president is the person who carries out the laws passed by the legislative branch. So the president, the vice president, and the cabinet all carry out the laws passed by the legislative branch, which is passed by Congress. So in November, we will go over more about the election, and we'll talk more about what that process really looks like for people who are 18 and over. Lastly, we have the judicial branch. The judicial branch is where laws are evaluated. The Supreme Court is what makes up the judicial branch. There are 9 justices nominated by the president, and again, they have to be approved by the Senate. And then under that are the other federal courts within all of our states. So, in the judicial branch, this is where laws are made by the legislative branch and carried out by the executive branch, but the judicial branch evaluates these laws to make sure that they are being followed, they're constitutional, and they can hand out punishment for laws that aren't being followed. So in the judicial branch, the Supreme Court is where people can come with questions like, is this law really constitutional? And a lot of laws have been overturned in the Supreme Court for not being constitutional, or there have been a lot of court cases that set precedent for future cases. And here also within courts is where the laws that are made by the legislative branch and kind of enforced by the executive branch, which has like our law enforcement, our officials, etc. Our judicial branch is the one that when someone breaks a law, the executive branch, their law enforcement's within it, they arrest people, and then they go to then they're sentenced to a court and a jury. That's one of our rights, is the right to a jury and a fair trial. And then it's the judicial branch that decides at the end of that jury and trial, etc., what the punishment is going to be, or if the person is guilty or innocent. So this is a very important part of our system, because if we just had laws but no one to enforce them, those laws really wouldn't matter. It's like if I said everybody had to wear green every single day to school, but when you came into school, I didn't really check to see if you're wearing green. So you really eventually you would stop just trying to wear green every day because there's no one there to enforce it. It's exactly how our laws and rules work here. So it's very important. 3 branches. Each one of these 3 branches should be written down in your social studies notebook. All right, we're almost finished. I know this is a lot of material and information, but you guys are crushing it. Next, we have a game. It's a sorting activity. You have to click on the link to the game, and it'll take you to a new tab. This is a really fun game. It helps you match, like a little matching game for each branches of the government. You can match different tiles. It helps you explain their powers, who runs them. It's a really great practice game, and you need to check it out. All right, here, this is your part of your assignment for today. You need to do this. There's a legislative, executive, and judicial branch. You have to fill in the blank. So it says legislative branch blanks the laws. So look through the slideshow, listen to the video, and figure out what that blank should be. Number 2, who is involved in the legislative branch? This is where you can type in right underneath this. You just click it. You each have your own copy. And you just say who is involved. Again, all this information is in this slide. There's also some videos attached to these slides that you can also watch if you want some more information. And number 3, what are 2 of their responsibilities? So each of these slides has the same question. It's just a little bit different for each branch. So make sure you answer each of these questions, and then you have to turn this slideshow back into your teacher. So you have to resubmit it through Google Classroom. So again, make sure you don't just share it to their email. You have to submit it to Google Classroom. Lastly, there's a song right here. It's kind of like a fun little rap about the 3 branches of government. And again, I know a lot of us might think, oh, I'm too old for fun songs. Well, you're wrong. Fun songs help us learn, they help us better understand information, and they're just kind of fun. Why not just jam out to a fun song, guys? So I recommend checking this song out. It will help us better understand the 3 branches of government and how we can really benefit from having 3 branches of government. So that wraps up our day today. There will be more Constitution fun today within this assignment. I will put up a bunch of links and some videos, and I hope you check them all out, and I hope you have the best Constitution Day ever. So, wish your parents, your siblings, your friends a happy Constitution Day, and have a great day.